Hey, so if you want financial freedom fast, then watch the first 5 minutes of this video. I'm gonna dig through the most essential things I've seen people when they transform overnight, they develop the right mindset. We're gonna dig into why that's stopping people. And also, I'm gonna share just the idea that society at large doesn't benefit when people escape living paycheck to paycheck. People benefit when you're anxious at work, when you're depressed, when you're feeling, that tired feeling when you get home and you doom scroll. Those types of people are better consumers, they're better purchasers, they're more plugged into the system. Those people are also more afraid to ask for a raise. They're more timid when it comes to negotiating. They don't feel confident in themselves, and that lack of confidence is not internal, it's not a fault for you, it's by design. The system benefits when people suffer like that. It's a harsh reality, but that's the truth. And so when I say mindset, I think about it as a couple things. Understanding your mindset towards money and towards financial freedom, but also understanding just the general layout, how consumer culture steals our confidence. And also, a good thing with mindset is just recognizing money's mindset towards us. Money doesn't care, it is neutral. Just like the universe is neutral in a way, money doesn't care. And so money will flow not based on your emotions, it's not based on, how you believe whatever. Money doesn't believe anything. Money just operates the way it operates. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about my journey over 4 years of basically going from broke, living paycheck to paycheck, stressed out, financially. Again, I had read over 100 books up to this point, and I had all the information, I had all the knowledge, right? But I didn't have the implementation. And so I'm going to share what I did over the next couple of years and what really drove the needle forward. And also, I'm going to share with you just sort of my guiding principles when it comes to breaking through those barriers of banking 50K a year, banking 100K a year, how you sort of escalate that up. And so, even if you're just early on in your journey and you're just trying to save an extra 5K a month and invest that in the market, this video is going to benefit you. But if you also want to, stick around and kind of see those bigger benefits, then I encourage you to stick around. And just in general, this information is not readily available because of the fact that society, again, does not benefit when people are financially independent. In a way, that person benefits tremendously, their community benefits, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So, again, if you're feeling stuck, just recognize it's often not something wrong with you, it's often just the way the system is operating around you. So, the first thing there is just, again, I think back to 24, 25, making that shift for me. I had the motivation, I wanted to do it. I grew up in a situation where the financial crisis impacted my family tremendously. It was really stressful. It was the first time in my life where really money was a big stress, and that actually what motivated me to read all these books. And I was reading about personal finance, and so I was like feeling very equipped. I graduated out of university, got my first job, and I felt like I was ready to go. But yet, I wasn't seeing the results. And so when it came time to actually building my financial wealth, again, this is the first step. And I wrote this 17-piece strategy. If you join my school community, it's there for free. We walk through this kind of wealth framework. I don't want to gatekeep any of this information. I enjoy when people benefit off of this information. But the simple thing is that people don't follow the strategies because, again, that mindset prevents them from even starting. So if you're sitting there thinking, I can't get ahead, I don't know what to do, just recognize it's by design. There's a reason why these things are not taught in school. There's a reason why there's no financial education. So one thing I'll just start off with is this idea that I also got, and this transformed it. But there's 4 levels of sort of, and I'll talk about 3 that most people operate in. There's the financially literate one. And then there's the 4th level that people operate at when they're financially independent. So the 4 ones here is basically how you look at, I would call it savings. But I'll tell you on the 4th level and how it's not actually savings. So the first 3 is, the first one is people look at their income minus their expenses equals whatever's left for savings. That's the default. Most people operate that way, and so all of a sudden their expenses naturally start to inflate over their time, and they're left with no savings. And that's why you see people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who are stressed about the idea about retiring. You see people in their 70s and 80s who run out early when it comes to money. It's devastating. And I think it impacts women even more so than men. It's really sad. Horrible, just horrible, horrible, horrible. But the second level to all of this is when you start to look at it like, and this is even worse, but it's basically you look at your income minus your expenses, but it equals that loan that you're going to take out. And you find people that are spending money on credit card interest. They've racked up bills and they're overspending their income, right? So the third level, and I think this is where financially literate people get to, is basically you start to look at your income minus your savings equals your expenses. Now that's savvy because you're able to save first. But there's the fourth level that I encourage everyone to get to. It's the financially independent version of this. Basically, you look at your income minus your investments equals your expenses. And the reason why I say investments is because when you put your money away into tax advantaged accounts towards your financial future, you're investing, you're buying a piece of your financial freedom. And so I encourage everyone to basically look at their investments and really think about each month, what's my investment rate? How much of this paycheck am I putting away towards investments? If it's zero, let's bump it up to 10%. If it's 10%, let's get a way to get it to 20%. This is what I did when I banked over $50,000 in a year. And so if I'm thinking about that paradigm, that switch, it was basically those four levels, and I had struggled through them, but get to that fourth level as quick as you can. And I think about it as, even if you're investing 1% of your income, even if it's $10 a day, that turns you into an investor, turns you into an owner of your own financial freedom. And you can now start buying more of that every day. And if you think about it, the dollars you put in today are going to be the most valuable investments you ever make because they have the benefit associated with able to compound over your lifetime. So if you're 25 and you put away $10, if you do the math, that $10 basically equals a full day of retirement at the age of 65. So phrased another way, if you put away $100 at the age of 25, you're basically going to pay for 10 days of retirement at 65. And the way I thought about this, and the way that I think accelerated me from investing 10% of my income towards 50%, was the idea that the more I invest, the more time I buy back. And by investing over half my income, all of a sudden that idea of, okay, I've purchased those days at age 65, and then all of a sudden you get set up for retirement and you feel good for retirement, but then all of a sudden that scale starts to move back, and you're able to say, wait a minute, I could now retire early at 63, at 61, at 55, at 45. You start to buy back these huge pieces at a time. And again, the most worthwhile investments you can make are when you're young, or even just at the end of the day, it's when it's today, because today is going to benefit you the most in terms of your future expenses. And I hate the word savings. I think it's just kind of weird. And I think, again, this is sort of by design. Society at large has done this by design. Because if you look at savings, nobody ever takes money with them after they pass away. You never actually truly save them. It's never with you forever. All savings eventually turn into future expenses. So I hate the word savings because it just like if you talk to friends, like, oh, I'm saving a lot of money, it's like people look at you kind of weird. It's just like taboo almost. It's sort of like, well, what are you saving money for? It's like people like kind of compete to like almost, it's just like this weird thing. But if you're saying, hey, I'm fighting for my financial freedom, I'm fighting for my time, I'm investing in my future, people look at you a little differently. So find those little tweaks along the way to get from 0 to 10% to 20%. And if you're going to try to get into like the nuts and bolts of it, there are 3 large spending categories. It's basically transportation, your housing, and then basically your food and alcohol or drinks and just like all of that category. Those are the 3 big ones that pretty much everyone has an opportunity to really save a lot of money on. I would include almost a 4th one in terms of taxes, where that year where I banked over $50,000, I was able to save an additional $10,000 just by utilizing all my tax advantage accounts. But that sort of becomes a default. So it's an additional benefit from just tackling those three expenses. And let's dig into it for a second. But basically, when you're looking at those three expenses, like for me, transportation, I basically got rid of my car. I moved closer to work. Boom, I can walk to work. It's healthier. And if I needed a car, I could, at that time, I think it was Turo. There's ways you can borrow a car with insurance. You're good to go. So all of a sudden now I'm not parking. I'm not paying for parking. I'm not paying for insurance. There's less headache around all that. And again, do that while you can in your life, because again, those dollars add up to huge savings. I just use the word savings, but add up to huge pieces of your time that you're purchasing back. The second piece for me was housing. I was spending, and CNBC ran a whole piece on this thing, but basically I was spending, I think I was like 12% of my income on housing, whereas the average in my community was something like 25 or like 25 to 40%. And I think it was higher towards like 40, 50% in some cases. So I am now saving by not, basically I could have afforded a 2-bedroom and I was basically living in a studio. A lot of people I see do this where, they could afford their own place, but they have roommates. There's ways you can carve out just huge savings automatically per month where you're not paying off some other, landlord's mortgage, and you can now invest that money. And again, it adds up to be huge. The third category would be the food and beverage. For me at that time, what I did basically was I was always drinking water when I went to restaurants. You've heard this a million times, but the idea of like, saving on Starbucks, I think about it as frugality. Frugality is not being cheap. It's basically being efficient and smart and savvy with your spend. So if you want to buy Starbucks, go for it. But just sort of translate, hey, this cup of coffee or this mocha, frappuccino, whatever, right? This drink is the equivalent of an entire day of my life at 65. And again, I'm happy to spend those. I'm happy to have those expenses when I recognize, oh, I got rid of my car and now I literally am able to retire, a few years earlier because I'm able to bank an extra few grand, not few grand. I'm able to bank an extra like 5, 6, 7, 8 grand per year for the next few years. And so when I have those big investments going, I feel great. I feel fine when I buy, the $5, $10 Starbucks thing. So sometimes you want to pick up the pennies, but sometimes it's like being dollar savvy, and pound and or whatever it is, pound savvy, penny foolish, right? I'm happy doing that versus being penny savvy, pound foolish, right? You want to get the big wins, and then the small little things don't matter as much. So those are the big areas you can just overnight start to shift. So if you're living in a big place, look for roommates. If you're living in a big place, consider downsizing. If you have a car, look for places that maybe you can go from 2 cars to 1 car. And again, in your 20s, usually you have that opportunity. And that's what I saw too, right? My money would go a lot further, and it was the opportunity in that window. So I went for it. Now, when I think about that early era of like getting to $50,000, that was the bulk of it. Now, when you get towards banking $100,000 in a year, I look at it as there's a few areas where the savings starts to become one, and I air quotes, right? Savings. The savings becomes essential, but now when you get towards 100K or more, banking that, you need to look at how to raise your income. And I look at it as there's ways you can raise your income, but I look at it as there's lots of ways you can build, just in general, your equity. And that could be in your reputation, that could be in your skills, that could be quite literally equity that you buy from a stock. Now it gives you dividends. It could also be in real estate in terms of you buying property and then also that appreciates and blah, blah, blah with all the real estate. And also with a rental property, right? You get rental income. So there's ways you can buy equity. And that's basically the whole point of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or one of the key factors from that book is this idea of use your income to buy assets and then allow those assets to pay you and then use that money to buy expenses. Most people, like we were going through those 4 layers earlier, most people will buy liabilities and then they have nothing to show for it after a year or two, or what have you, right? And then they end up staying in the paycheck to paycheck, society benefits, and we're back to the financial stress from the beginning. So if you want real financial freedom, it's getting through those levels and being able to understand that I can use my income to buy the equity that I need to escape, or at least to carve out. And again, it's not about escaping as much as just becoming financially free allows you to make smarter decisions. For me, if I'm on a job, it allows me to think more clearly. There's less stress associated with it. There's no more need for money, and that's a huge relief. It just feels really good. But it's more about, make it tangible. If it's abstract for you, think about like how you can help your parents out, how you can help your kids go to college. Maybe you just want to buy that nice vacation and not worry about, how am I going to afford this. There's all these real life benefits associated with it that when you start to invest towards that, it becomes automatic, I would say, versus sort of the default again is what people do is they don't think about it. They spend 2,000 hours a year earning money. They don't spend a couple hours learning how to manage that money or grow it. And so all of a sudden you end up with buying, DoorDash, or you're buying like a luxury car when you really can't afford it. Or you're spending just way more on housing. There's all these categories where your money's going to just start going, and it ends up benefiting the landlord, ends up benefiting, the luxury car company. It benefits all these other places, and it keeps you stuck living paycheck to paycheck. So again, those are some of the key elements around just getting towards 100K. And also within that too, I think you start to get into entrepreneurship, building your own business, because I think within a career, there's certain incremental levels you can definitely make, and over a long time, it's beneficial. But if you want to fast track financial freedom fast, and just sharing my story of 25 broke, getting towards now 100K saved, basically my second year. First year was 50K, second year was 100K. The reason why I was able to become financially free to the point where I could leave my job is because now all of a sudden I'm starting to make six figures in a month by basically building out a business, building out a service, a product, and articulating that to the market, learning communication, learning marketing, learning sales. And so when you're building up those skills, kind of, that's basically what I would do is just sort of look at the skills that are going to drive value. And for me, I was trying to become a millionaire as fast as I could. And so I was obsessed with that. Now, there's other skills and other equity you can build. I think about it as, there's different types of net worth. And I think about it as how much time do you have in your life? And of course, that's going to be related strongly to money. But just in general, I mean, some people work 40 hours a week, some people work 10 hours a week, some people work 80 hours a week. And it's different for everybody in terms of what kind of lifestyle you want to live. But yeah, there's sort of your time. I would say there's almost like a spiritual component, sort of like your emotional control. And it's beneficial too, again, because I think people who are emotionally just flying around in the wind are going to be more compelled to get sucked into consumer culture. So you actually benefit if you have a good spiritual base, a good emotional intelligence. That's going to go a long way. And sort of kind of coupled into all this too is the fact that relationships end up becoming a very important part of building wealth over a long time. Not just who you choose as a spouse, your husband or your wife or your partner, but also the way your kids are raised or the way your parents behave around money. All these factors are kind of generational. And so I think about it as picking the wrong partner will cost you over half your net worth. It's as simple as that. So you can fall into these big traps. So don't make those mistakes. And I think about it as, again, what skills am I learning? And if I go back to communication, it's being able to understand what are my values. Do I want my kids to go to public school, private school? Do I want the best healthcare for them? Do I want like the best doctors, the best teachers? Do I want them in extracurricular activities? Do I want to do those things? So it's understanding what's the money going towards, and all of a sudden, again, if I'm just feeling at this stage of my life, if I'm just thinking getting home and I've meal planned, let's say on that Sunday, and boom, I come home, I got the meal ready to go, I'm good to go, versus a different scenario in that year, let's say, where I did not, if I were to spend more money, basically I come home, I had not meal prepped, and then all of a sudden I'm spending money on DoorDash. I mean, these are real life benefits towards planning ahead. So basically, like I said before, if you have 2,000 hours in the year earning money, spend a couple hours learning the tactics, the strategies, and then it's about living that lifestyle. And for me, with the mindset, going back to the original thing, once I saw that each meal was buying an entire day of my financial, of my freedom, it became a lot easier to eat rice and beans, metaphorically, right? It became a lot easier to eat that, $3 sandwich instead of spending $15 on lunch. It became a lot easier because as I'm eating that $3 sandwich, yeah, maybe it's like, oh, it'd be nice to have a nice meal and someone made it for me, whatever. But I'm also just sitting there thinking, wow, this is a whole day. And so it just becomes a lot, simpler. Um, Now, as I get towards the end of this journey with financial freedom, and I know this video's gone long now, but again, it's a real life experiment because again, this information is not widely available, and I'll see too kind of the retention of the video. Where do people drop off? Why don't they stick around? It's again, I think people get sucked back into, I can't do that. That's for him. He got lucky, or he just got a lucky break, or he already had some connections, or what have you. But again, it's crushing to see people buy into that mindset. I hate it, and that's why I'm trying to encourage people to follow a wealth framework to actually build real wealth for themselves. And again, I think there's a lot of overnight changes. But again, I think about it as, at the end of the day, if you want to build wealth fast, it requires basically, I would say, building up your own business or building up some real skills that are going to be really valuable to the market. Nowadays, everything's on AI. Is it a fad? Who knows? Whatever. But I'm seeing a lot of young kids in their 20s that are getting, paid two, 300, $400,000 in their early 20s. That opportunity for me wasn't really there, but I did see opportunities elsewhere. And again, if you're sort of thinking, oh, it's impossible to become a millionaire, like the simple stat from last year was like, I think it was like 800,000 people became millionaires last year. The other way I look at it too is there's over 1 million people in the US that make $1 million or more a year. There's a lot of people out there. So you can become one of them. It's not impossible. It's not all luck. And the strategies I'm sharing in this video, I hope you can see they're not based on survivorship bias. It's not like where you see sort of these interviews about successful people and they just say, "Oh, I worked really hard." Because a lot of people work really hard and they don't make it, right? So I think when someone becomes successful, it's very easy to look back in hindsight to sort of rationalize and justify, okay, I worked really hard, I got up really early and stuff like that, and that's what led to the success. And they discount the factor of they got lucky, they were at the right place, right time, and they already had some sort of inherited advantages, right? They discount that factor. But like I said, money doesn't operate that way in terms of just the baseline personal finance. Money's neutral. It just flows the way it flows. And so you can do these activities to reach financial freedom faster. I honestly think anyone could get there in 2 years if they're serious about building a business. But for me, I talked about this 4-year journey I had. I'm happy to dig more into it on future videos. So subscribe if you haven't already. Ooh, sweating a little bit. But I would say subscribe if you want to hear more about it. Leave a comment if you got some value out of this video. I'm opening up this school page to kind of teach this stuff for free, kind of walk through my framework every week, basically on a 1-hour open Q&A call. So check out the school community, which is coming soon. Subscribe, leave a comment. And I would say, at the end of the day, who am I, right? I'm a CPA. I've been on this wealth journey. I've taught hundreds of people in workshops. I've worked one-on-one with many people. I've had thousands of people reach out to me over the years. I've been talking about personal finance for, 15 years now. I think at 19 was when I first picked up Roger Lowenstein's book on Buffett, and I've got it right over here. But this book changed my life. It led me to discover all sorts of things about personal finance, and again, I read over 100 books on personal finance. So my mission, having been through all this, is now to basically give away as much information as I can, build a community, have some accountability within the community, have some fun with it, because I don't think this is really hard. I don't think it's really challenging. I don't think it's really stressful. But again, everyone's surrounded, almost like crabs in a bucket. Everyone's surrounded by like culture where savings are frowned upon, savings, where getting ahead is frowned upon, changing and transforming, almost like kind of weird, right? So I want to share with you sort of the tips and tricks I've learned along the way personally, and also what I've seen in terms of different clients of mine over the years, kind of the hurdles I've seen them with. And the advantage I think here that you'll have in the community is basically I've worked through hiccups. I mean, of course, myself, but also I've seen other people where they struggle, the common roadblocks. So I want to encourage everyone sort of to voice out if you're having any issues, because oftentimes you'll find other people are in the same boat, and I find that it's kind of the same repeated patterns of, okay, I just banked 50K, but I can't get to like that 100K mark. There's basically the same common hurdles that happen over and over again I've seen with people. Um, and again, having been there and at points in my life making six figures in a month, I can also speak to that demographic as well. But really, the community, I think, is just for people who are going to be trying to escape living paycheck to paycheck. They want to build their financial freedom fast. Um, and so, I mean, yeah, so check that out. It's around the corner. Really excited for more of the content coming out. Let me know again in the comments what you got out of the video. I'm really pouring my heart into this project. It's a passion project of mine. I'm giving away all this stuff for free. I benefit because, again, it's just a story that I lived through where it caused a lot of pain for me as a kid, and I don't want other people to suffer when it comes to money. There's so many people that relationships get torn up by money. People, the divorce rates are it's like people are, it's just, I don't know, money causes so many problems that I love when I'm hanging out with people who are financially independent and they're not stressed about money. You're able to experience so much more in life. You get the joy of actually living. You're not tied to the anxious like future. You're not stressed out at work. You're not like tiptoeing around like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna get fired. You escape all of that. And I think anyone in their 20s can basically become financially independent by rapidly, doing what I said in this video. But again, the steps are clear. And like I had it, I had read over 100 books on personal finance, but I did not actually start doing it until I was being held more accountable and I had a community around me. And so I want to recreate that here today. So again, hope you got something out of the video, and until next time, peace.